Morning. I'm from Freiburg, from the Catholic University in Freiburg. I'm an emeritated professor from there. And my presentation refers to art therapy with refugees and the importance of the intermediate space. Since 2018, I've been involved in project work with refugees from different countries in Freiburg. On the one hand, my art therapeutic work is with a group of children and young adolescents in a refugee home of the German Red Cross, living in containers. And on the other hand, it is the Refugium Center for traumatized refugees from children to adulthood, each with one-to-one care, referring to the different reasons for escaping from their homeland and the stressful experiences of flight. Therapeutic support is required for children and adolescents as well as adults. An art therapeutic setting with transversal access options is particularly suitable for this. In addition to other forms of counseling and psychotherapy or psychiatric support, a reference to space and time is created in which it is possible to work in a resource-orientated, revealing and processing manner. And the following exemplary images from art therapy will be presented in connection to different cases in the work with refugees. I start with the art therapeutic settings as an intermediate space, just for a short explanation. The psychotherapeutic setting of Donald Wood Winnicott attaches particular importance to the intermediate space also as a kind of safe inner place or place of well-being. Flight and migration are phenomena that permeate human history. The reasons for this can be economic, but also go hand in hand with persecution, the experience of war and natural disasters. This also includes a transgenerational problem, as traumatic experiences can unconsciously be passed on to the next generation. It is also associated with cultural uprooting, lost relationships, and specific biographical trauma, but also experiences of discrimination, exclusion, and racism. These transgenerational aspects are of particular importance when accompanying refugees. The fears about a right to stay after the escape, but also the integration into a foreign culture with different language and different living conditions, or with sometimes cramped refugee accommodation, are stressful aspects. In the creative setting, inner images can be activated, which mediate a bridge between inner and outer reality. Implicit memory combined with repressed experiences can be given a changed sensory experience in the intuitive design process. Especially for people with traumatic experiences, mostly only sensory and physical experiences remain in the memory, but mostly without context, while this is only accessible in fragments for the explicit memory. In the intermediate context of art therapeutic process, there are overlaps, or in resource-orientated activity, self-strengthening space of experience can be opened up in a playful way. In addition, this protected reference to space and time offers holding and containing, known from psychoanalysis in relation to crisis situations. The horror experienced and one's own threat combined with a mode of survival can be superimposed in self-determined art therapeutic action or an experience of coherence as emphasized by Aaron Antonovsky. That means an experience on the three components as understanding, self-efficacy, and meaningfulness. Furthermore, as a trial action is possible in the art therapeutic process, which corresponds to the relationship dynamics with accompanying therapists in the protected framework of the art therapeutic setting or in a dialogical design to support trial action. Now I come to the examples. The social, cultural identity and memory work. Refugees from Africa, such as Gambia, for instance, many of whom are housed in Freiburg, have often come via Libya, where they previously earned their living as welcome guest workers for physical work. The situation as migrant workers in Libya had changed due to the renewed civil war and the execution of Gaddafi by rebels. They were persecuted as Black Africans and possible mercenaries by the rebels, were captured, tortured, and in some cases forced onto boats to cross the Mediterranean. This also implied, for example, a young man from Gambia who had left home at the age of 16 with his brother 2 years older than him after the father died when he was 9 years old. He and his brothers had no secure living condition after the mother remarried, and they were subsequently housed by a despotic uncle in another town where they worked for him. It was helpful to draw up a lifeline with him, including the ups and downs of his past and a reconstruction of his flight through various African countries, the desert, and other incisive experiences. His older brother was captured by Gaddafi's opponents in Libya at the time, as well as he, and has been missing ever since, while he was tortured in Tripoli prison and forced into a boat to cross to Italy under threat of his life. After the stressful crossing of the Mediterranean as a non-swimmer, like many others, he later arrived in Germany via Italy. By creating a lifeline, he was able to gain a detached view of life phases. Previously, after a group session with communal pictures to get to know each other, he painted a large fish orientated to the left in the individual session. You can see it here. I show it to you here. But also for small fishes below in communication. The inner images of his homeland from early childhood came up, for example, life in the village with his parents. Subsequently, also accompanied by settlings into the social cultural environment that was new to him, figure orientations emerged as in the magic book, a collage work with illustrated pictures. See? This turning back to home experiences as inner resources was also the subject of other refugees, independently of each other as a social identity experience. Yes. In fear of this, coping with trauma has been strongly orientated towards stabilization and resource strengthening work and less narrative. Irrespective of this, psychosomatic stress disorders have repeatedly occurred when their life situation became conflictual for them due to external conditions, such as not receiving the right to stay, the situation in the refugee home, lack of support opportunities, also due to the corona pandemic. The next, transgenerational trauma processing and visual experiences. In children and adolescents, traumatic experiences have often manifested in maladaptive behavior, such as emotional withdrawal or aggressive behavior towards peers. In the case of Syrian war refugees who, for example, also spent years in a tent accommodation in a refugee camp in Greece. The trauma of war and the experience of fleeing across the Mediterranean with many deaths characterizes their pictorial designs or is repeatedly thematized chemically. For example, a Syrian boy played at the sandbox with people or figures of men being eaten by chalk in the water, whereby fantastic resuscitation aspects developed in the game over several sessions through magical figure. The play at the sandbox with figures also created a scenic processing without being thematized in detail. It is this playful imaginative processing that has a strengthening effect. In contrast, the schematic depiction of traumatized scenes carries an inner emptiness, as the following picture of a 70-year-old girl, you can see it here, and an 8-year-old boy from Syria show. While wishful fantasies, such as the boy's house with an ice cream cone, contain a place of safety and protection, as you can see here. It is the expression of these stored inner images and the finding of resource-orientated counterparts that is helpful in processing. Children and adolescents in particular also carry the traumas and fears of their parents, and in the sense of transgenerational aspect. Especially for them, forms of expression are needed to be able to process with this differently. With the creative intervention, depending on the respective needs and wishes of the individual, an intermediate space of the inner and outer reality is created, where an integration can take place along with noticeable improvements in the psychosomatic well-being. In this context, expressive free expressions is also important for children, such as starting from design to enjoyable smearing with colors and overlapping, like you can see here, the imprint of one's own hands as self-experience up to self-initiated design occasions. Starting from self-painted house motifs, for example, they wanted to design their own three-dimensional house. You can see it here. With assistance, this was enlarged with cardboard boxes into house construction into which they could crawl, like this. Like a safe place or a place of well-being, this self-constructed house became a counterpart to living in the container of the refugee home. Having an intimate place that was decorated and provided a retreat in their art studio space took a special symbolic power. Creating a place for oneself, the doll, among other things, took on a substitute function in this sense and helped to arrive in the new social cultural space. Next, on the importance of a place of well-being in experiencing nature in refugee work. As a so-called resource-orientated place of well-being, the experience of nature as a resonance reference is of particular importance. In the selection of image motives for orientation in the design, landscape references dominate alongside animal motives. Nature acts as a stimulus, as for example in the case of a Syrian woman who had studied art herself but not painted for over 7 years since her war experiences and her flight. For her, the art therapy meeting became a place where she seemed to rediscover her love of painting before the Civil War. In the form of a landscape motifs based on photographs or picturesque flower motifs, as you can see here, it helped her to regain a psychosomatic improvement in her condition. And the common togetherness as an intimate place of creating, where personal feelings could flow in, their creative expression became freer in a more spontaneous and intuitively stimulated way. The work the experience of order, as you can see here, and stability have also shaped sequences of her creative work. It involves phase-orientated work and priming to repeated processing step, the completion of a painting whereby experiencing nature in its various facets is significant. In a different way, a man from Gambia painted his early experience of nature, such as the figure of a fruit-bearing mango tree, which reactivated a positive childhood memory. Or, based on a photo, the 17-year-old girl from Syria could paint this picture, which had a stabilizing effect on her. The strength of animals, as well as the specificity in the region of her own childhood and early youth, could strengthen identification and awaken resources. At the same time, it was also about securing the place, the experience of defensiveness, as it is also repeatedly occurred in playing the Playmo box, consisting of different Playmobil materials for a therapeutic setting, as you can see here. Fences, strong animals, and protective persons are positioned in front of a substitute figure as an idealized hero or animated in a scenic play. A safe place is protected and is shown as particularly valuable with various accessories such as safe, a castle, a king. Outlook. What is noticeable about the art therapy work with refugees is that they can only express themselves to a limited extent due to the lack of language skills. Moreover, bridging the gap with the help of translators is difficult and mostly only of importance in clarifying life and flight experiences, especially the transverbal expression by means of the pictorial can connect to unconscious emotions. In addition, it is noticeable that the refugees, after establishing contact with dialogical forms of designing together with the therapist and getting to know each other, often choose self-determined pictorial motives that are known from trauma research for stabilization. This concerns, for example, landscape in which one feels safe, comfortable, and secure, regenerating water as a spring, stream, lake, etc., a tree from the biographical experience, healing rays of the sun, other inner sources of strength, such as protectors, helpful animal beings, etc., remembrance of pleasant childhood experiences of communal life reference. It is also the atmosphere of the room in a successful relationship dynamic with the therapist, which is fundamental also with regard to holding and containing. The courage to act playfully, to try things out, to reject, and to revive, create a togetherness based on empathy and compassion that is a feeling of security in the creative setting. In this context, the reference to space and time includes a link between inner images and real life as a resource-orientated action. At the same time, it enables traumatic experiences to be overlaid with strengthening resources accompanied by an experience of coherence. Nature and a communal experience, a mediation of past domestic life references with an orientation towards a new cultural arrival. It is striking that when care in the kindergarten, integration in school, learning the new language in a course, but also a job, and finding a place of one's own succeed, psychological stabilization increases due to the change in external circumstances. Nature and the communal experience in mediation, a past local life references with an orientation towards a new in culture arriving take on a special significance. Thank you very much.